Hey, what's up, guys? Lucas Burnley here, along with my co-host TJ Schwartz. You are listening to the Edge and Flow podcast. We're actually hitting our timeline again on this one, so that's pretty exciting.
Yeah, back in the rhythm.
Back in the rhythm. I'm getting ready to leave town again tomorrow. Things are still moving pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Haven't caught up in a little while. Tell us what you got going on, TJ.
Well, top of mind this morning, I've machined the turn fixture. So we have a fully operational fixture. There's still some programming to do on the actual machining of the knife, but that's not too difficult. Surface grinding is basically what we're waiting on, and I'm told by Ron that it's probably about an hour and a half from now that he'll have the first table load off.
Ooh, nice.
And so after the pod, I'm probably going to run over to his place, get him, do a little programming. It's possible I could spin that machine up and start on him today just to start to flesh it out. But for sure, tomorrow we are machining turns.
Dude, this is the rapidest, most rapid production cycle I think I've ever experienced.
Well, I'm having fun with it. It does plug into the system pretty well. There's a few the fixture is different in a couple of ways.
Yep.
Generally, the locating features is kind of a different route, but
because I did weird designy stuff that's not optimized for machining.
Yeah, I would say so. It's not optimized for work holding. I'll say
for
that.
work holding. Fair.
Yeah,
right. But doesn't affect machining. Does affect work holding.
Yeah. So I think we got it figured out because
it looked like you just sent me photos, and it looks like a pretty solid solution.
All I know is I have the 3D print of the turn, and I put it on the fixture to see just how if my pin locations were going to be correct, and it did feel solid. So it's the actual like success here will be when we get real knives off, and that's yet to be seen, but I think it's going to work.
Dude, it's going to happen pretty fast. It's very exciting.
Yeah, I'm excited. It's going to be a sweet one.
Got to start building a little hype for it, dropping some photos.
Yeah. Yep. And I'm going to start probably posting videos of machining it and start doing kind of a little bit of a rollout of some concept ideas and where we'll go with the sheath and stuff. So
nice.
Yeah.
Right. We haven't dialed sheath yet. We still got to play with that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. So,
nice, man.
So that's top of mind. But that's kind of what I've been working on in the margins. Otherwise, just working on shipping a bunch of knives, Overland Sports and Overlands and Confidants and all that.
Nice.
So
are you between? So if machine's tied up on turn, you guys are through machining processes on the other knives, and you're just in assembly and shipping, or are you also running parts?
Hold on one second. I've got a visitor.
I see a baby.
Hey Delta, I'm
Hi,
recording.
Delta.
Can you go find Mom? Here, let me pause. We got visitors. Sorry, real quick intermission there. Had a couple of kids break and enter, so got that taken care of. Good stuff.
So good.
But where were we at?
All right, we're talking machining. We're talking where you're at on the other knives.
Yeah, so they're all just in production roll now, and so I'm in a new kind of business model of smaller batches more frequently. On all models, and so basically at all times there's knives moving, and so we're machining turns coming up real quick, and then pretty much right on the heels of that will be more. So it's kind of just off and on with the style, just these small batches coming in and coming out.
What are you considering small batch?
Like 25 to 50 per model, because I want to get at least 100 going to heat treat at once to make that economical. But per model, like 25 to 50 as a like bite size amount that's going at a time coming off the style.
And so as far as a change, like initially, well, it makes sense too, because you had like a single model. So single model, you were running a bigger batch and then sending it all off, waiting for it to come back or starting the next thing. So now you're just keeping consistency in production at all times.
Yeah, it's partly necessitated, like you said, because of various models,
right?
Not having just one. But another thing is, like, now that I have Dalton, so before I would have a certain amount of orders I'm trying to fill. I'd build those and a bunch more and try to build myself a buffer.
Yep.
So that when they go to heat treat and they come back for finishing, I don't run out too quickly when I'm shipping initial orders and new ones coming in.
Right.
And so it's kind of like a large inchworm kind of feel. And now because I have him and there's more processes happening simultaneously, we can do smaller batches. And
Right.
like I said, it's like a smaller inchworm. So it used to be like if you were ordering at the exact right time and you wouldn't necessarily know, you could be on the very front end of a batch or the back end, and the bigger the batch, the longer the gap. And so
Right.
it was I'm not necessarily shortening the lead time massively. I'm just making it more consistent so that whether you order like a month ago or this month, that should be roughly the same lead time.
Right.
So that's kind of where we're headed.
That's pretty cool. I would think like, I mean, on the financial side too, it kind of does two things, which is like theoretically smaller outlays of cash each time, but then also not waiting for money to come back in.
That ideally that would be the case, but the sad thing is I still have to order a bunch of steel. So these batches are getting
Fair.
separated out after, and so it's really just the heat treat that's
Okay.
like, and so I wish it did benefit on the cash flow side. I don't know that it does a whole lot, but I think it's a more efficient way to do it.
Also is definitely like a protection as far as like mistakes, like you lose a batch or something goes wrong with heat treat. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah. I've done like 200-300 knives before and sent them to heat treat, and that's nerve wracking.
It's nerve wracking. Yeah. That's a lot that can go wrong.
Huge torpedo coming your way. If something.
Yeah. I hadn't even heard that you had like modified that. So that's very cool. Yeah. It's funny. I think a lot of times as we're looking at manufacturing, like you look at like what, as you scale, like methods of scaling as it relates to the size of your scale.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems like you and Dalton, that like opened up this potential. And it's like, you didn't try to like fight to hold like, no, this is the way I do it. I'm going to keep doing it this way. You just let it kind of like morph and adapt.
Mm-hmm. Right.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. It's working good. And that does bring up a point with the turn. So like in the past knives that have come out, I've gone pretty much wide open and done the huge batch method at the beginning to just like kind of serve like the initial demand. I don't think as I get more models going, I don't think it splices well to do that because it displaces the other models too much.
Yep.
And so with the turn, it's going to start out in the smaller batch model.
Yep.
And that's what I'll be able to sell. Like, and so it may be that's like intermittent availability for a little while until the demand stabilizes to where it does become just a normal part of production.
I feel like you probably know what my thought on that is going to be.
Yeah, I think so.
That I think is a method. It sounds like a necessity, but I actually find that like a much more preferable method.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Because I think a lot of brands and a lot of products like do come out with a ton of availability, and I think it damages it. I don't know that it damages it, but what I do think it affects is like the potential kind of like stickiness of the product.
Yeah.
I just really like, and I think that's coming from the custom side where like we don't have the ability to make a bunch of something. So it's like a lot of times you'll do something that's popular, but you only have a few.
Mm-hmm.
Then you make a few more, and it lets the demand grow organically. So like, even though this is pushing into like more production numbers, it really maintains that feeling. I love that. I think that's great.
I'm happy about it. I agree with you. And I'm also happy because this is going to be seen by some eyeballs on your side and your customers that haven't seen my stuff. And they're already kind of pre-understanding of the way these availabilities are on drops are.
Yep.
And like my customers, I don't know that they're all trained up on that. So I might have to, in like when I write an email out, I might have to do a pretty good job of like describing that, like, just so you know, I'm not like intentionally bottlenecking these, but it's splicing into bigger production. So it may not be that like a week after we launch it, they'll still be there, but I don't know. It's just an open-ended thing, but it's somewhat capped.
There's definitely growing pains there. Like if we make these and they sell out, that's like the immediate question is like, well, why didn't you make more? And that, I think a lot of times people are so used to like mass manufacturing that seems like a relevant question, or that like, you're intentionally bottlenecking. It's like, no, you just have multiple products and you don't have the bandwidth to like necessarily satisfy demand. Nor is that always the goal from a standpoint of like risk or anything else. Like to be able to truly satisfy demand, means that your manufacturing capacity has to go up exponentially.
Yeah. And dangerously.
Yeah.
Possibly.
So that's fun. That serves like a secondary purpose here too, which is like, it is, there's kind of like a training component of just like experiencing, like you said, your normal customer base has not been the sales method.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so at least I think that's the fun side of some of these collaborations, is not only are you getting to have some crossover of customer base, like the conversations, the fun product, but you also are actually bringing in different business practices.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah. It's going to be interesting. And like I said, the business is changing as more models come in.
Right.
The process being streamlined around new products hitting the catalog is something that's top of mind. Like I said, because like I launched the Sport and it was only the third model and it fit in pretty good. And I just opened it up and I had like a relative idea of where I would cap it. So if I really got buried, but I didn't really think I would hit that, and I didn't, and so that was fine. But then it displaced a lot of energy and a lot of other products,
Right.
and I wouldn't say that it delayed other orders really that much because, like I said, I was kind of diving into that new knife while Dalton was kind of maintaining some other knives. But what it felt like is like after that huge wave is satisfied, you almost have like this weird moment where you're like, okay, this big surge is behind us, and then it's like there's almost like a hangover feeling of like,
Oh
okay,
yeah.
what was I doing? Like
Yeah.
where are we? And I don't like the feeling of a roller coaster in business. I mean, it's just never good. So a more like slow burn release, I think it gives me more time to just think and strategize as opposed to climb a mountain and then slide down the other side and then have to come up with something new. You know what I mean?
Dude, we've talked around that with shows.
Mm-hmm.
And like for so many makers that like you build to the show, you do the show, and that's that. You just hit the other side. You go back to your shop and all the work that you started is done, and or like you don't have anything like midline. And so I intentionally started leaving pieces at various stages so that when I come home from a show, I've got like something that I can kind of on ramp myself back in. And then after a couple of days, or a week, you usually are kind of back into the flow.
Exactly.
But yeah, you get that like hangover, just totally drained.
Yeah.
You know?
So yeah, moving forward, I'm feeling good about that. That's what we're doing. So
nice, man.
I do want to get one of these sent out to you once I get them back from Heat Treat. I want to see what you think. We'll touch base. We'll talk about sheaths. Nice. And then the other thing that is still open ended is the laser engraving of my logo and your and your design logo, and that it's going to be a little bit different because I noticed the actual flat above the bevel is small enough that it may actually not accommodate any engraving.
Yep.
So it might be a bevel engraved logo.
I think we could come up with something cool.
Yeah.
I feel like it has to be. One thing I was thinking was like we could. I'm gonna save that. Yeah. Okay. Bevel engraving definitely works.
Yeah.
And that might for this model. I was gonna say we could go around a hole, which would be super cool, except we don't have holes.
Yeah.
Not really.
Yeah.
Not like symmetrical.
Yeah.
Like
not round.
Not round.
Yeah.
Okay. Speaking of shows, I just got back from the Pacific Northwest Custom Invitational, which is put on by Nick Rolfe and Billy Cho. Kind of like what I would consider like the begin is like an enthusiast show to begin, right? Kind of like a meet and greet that's scaled. And it was in Seaside, Oregon. Dude, it was super fun. Talk about like a who's list of makers. I don't know if you looked at the roster.
I did. Looked amazing.
Dude.
Yeah.
Michael Walker had a knife on the table.
Don't see those very often.
Dude, that is, well, he doesn't, I think we've talked about this a little bit. Like in the knife world, like you still have your paths. And so there's not like with certain makers, there's not crossover. Like Michael Walker is not doing the same shows that like I am doing. Right. Mm-hmm. Maybe with the exception of like Tactical Invitational. But they're doing like Art Knife Invitational and like these shows that are geared specifically towards like the higher price point work. Like you're kind of like the $20,000 and up crowd.
Multi-month knives.
Yeah. Multi-month knives. You show up with 2 knives or 1 knife or, so yeah, that was really fun. I got to spend a significant amount of time with him. We're both from New Mexico. I'd been to his shop, but I haven't really talked with him very much. And he has some new designs coming out with CRKT, which is very cool. He was going to be up there, and so CRKT asked if I wanted to just sit in studio and have like a knife guy conversation with him. I was like, pretty cool peak experience, man. Like, you know, like these guys, you don't always get that like focus of attention. Like, even if I were to see him at like Tactical Invitational, I'm not going to get an hour and a half just to sit and like rap with him, you know, and like ask questions. So that was super fun. I don't know when CRKT is releasing that, but it's a pretty fun.
I look forward to that.
Yeah, that's fun. And then, yeah, man, just, it was nice. Got to catch up with a bunch of people, kind of the same flow. Didn't have a table at this show. But
yeah,
all good.
Stuff happens.
Stuff is happening.
I missed out on the show, but I did get a consolation prize because I was really bummed about missing out on hanging out with other makers and catching up. Well, Jesse Jarris, I have been mispronouncing that for 10 years.
Yep.
It's Jarris.
Okay, Jarris.
Silent Z, and it's like as if it's a US, like Jarris.
Everyone says Jesse Jarros.
Yeah, that's what I've been saying.
Jarris.
Yeah. So he and his wife and awesome 2 kids came back from the show. And they came through here. They stayed a whole day, like hanging out in the shop with us. We had lunch. We hung out. You know, my in-laws have like a stock tank that we've turned into a pool. Went and hung out there, let the kids get in there. And that was really fun because I've probably talked to him a total of like 20 minutes prior to that. But I could tell we had a lot in common. And he's got a 1 and a 3-year-old, and I have a 1 and a 3-year-old. We got them together, and it was just gelled. You know what I mean?
I love it, man. It's really That's cool. Great. Yeah. Where is he from?
He's from
Midwest,
Nebraska.
Right? Okay.
And he moved to Montana, Kalispell, Montana, like 6-ish years ago.
Oh, nice.
And that's where he's out of now. But
nice, man.
Yeah. Beautiful part of the country up there.
I love it. Yeah, I've known Jesse for a long time. Same thing. Like I feel like we spent time together at shows like kind of early on, and then as shows go, you start to like build little networks, and that's like, you know, you start to like kind of hang out with different groups and stuff. So, and it's nice seeing him do well.
He was talking about you and the kind of the posse that used to be next to each other at like the gathering and stuff. Yeah. And Tom Crine and whatnot.
Dude, so
he had a few stories.
So with me not doing Seaside, that's the shift. So I had some work started. So I'm going to do USN this year.
Awesome, dude.
I'm actually very excited about it. USN for me was like a very formative show. I did the first, I think, 10 in a row. And it was a really interesting process because USN Forum, right? Usual Suspects Network, back when forums were like the main popular social context for like knives. That really gave me like my first kind of bump in the industry, where I was having like a lot of eyes on my work and like starting to like learn about developing community and kind of growing a customer base. So as that show rolled into the USN network, like USN show, a lot of makers had like a pre-existing kind of customer base. And if not people you'd met in person, at least people who knew your screen name and had context. And I can't even begin to tell you how valuable that is.
Mm-hmm.
So due to just life, like it's the last few years have been spotty for me, but I'm very, very excited to go and just like same thing, go visit.
I haven't been there yet. I really want to.
Yeah, it's wild to me.
I was talking to Jesse about it. He has an amazing story about how he got his start in the knife industry revolving around USN. Dude. And it was like the beginning for him. And I really am tempted to tell it right now, but I would butcher it. So I think we should someday get him on here and have him tell that story.
I love it.
He told me the story. I was like, man, that is one of the better like origin stories I've heard, and it regards to USN. So,
all right,
yeah, we got to hear that on
That's
here.
Fun. Maybe we can do that. Maybe we can like do a recap. Is he doing the show this year?
USN, yep.
Yeah. Okay. So maybe we can do like a little triplisode or something, and we can do a recap of the show.
Yeah, that would be fun.
Sound fun?
Yeah.
Sweet, man.
Of course, if he wants to do it. I guess I think he listens to this, so maybe he's listening when we put this out, and like, absolutely not. I don't want to be on your guys' crappy podcast.
We should. I think it'd be fun to bring a few people on.
Yeah.
We need to figure out how to do that. It was cool. It was really fun talking with Michael because you see like some of the, like I saw some of the context of this like roll into it. And I'm not an interviewer. It's not a skill set that I have. And so I have no idea how that will turn out. Mm-hmm. But I was able to like link it back into like our conversations, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
So makes me want to do more of it.
Yeah. We'll get people on, dude. We got to start.
Think, man, you and I, we've been going so fast. One thing, so we've talked about like monetizing the pod and like some various methods of doing that. I figured out a solution for us for merch, for both some design and some fulfillment originating in the same place. Just wanted to drop that as a teaser because I think that basically you and I are pretty busy right now. We know that we want to do this, but we're also having a hard time making it like the top priority.
Yeah.
So I think I figured out at least one small solution to us, like, you know, maybe getting a website and some baseball caps or something.
Yeah, it's got to happen.
I really want it to.
Yeah, I enjoy the podcast so much that, I mean, even though we don't have time, like it's core, maybe not in an economic way or not at all in an economic way right now, but to me, it is core to like a normal week for me to sit and hang out and talk.
Well, and that's, you know, the keeping our engagement with it, really the areas that we enjoy, I think probably long run is how we keep it rolling.
Yep.
And if we got bogged down in like the business of it, I think it would damage it. Mm-hmm. And at the same time, you and I are both interested in the process of monetization for like something like a podcast, just from a learning standpoint. So, man,
I did have, it's a completely, total tangent, but it did occur to me, I had mentioned, someone commented they liked our talk about coolant and the conversation we had about keeping coolant quality up and replacing coolant. I did find something out this week that it maybe just could add to that conversation.
Okay.
The coolant in my machine that I replaced, because the old stuff was foaming, immediately foamed again. I found out what actually was happening.
Okay.
The sight glass that I have either was clogged or had limited flow or had like some sort of surface tension bubble in it to where it wasn't accurate. And so it would appear full, but it was just low enough. The Sile has because it's wide and shallow, the tank, it has a pretty small margin for evaporation where the pump sucks a little bit of air. And if it sucks just a little bit of air, you still have coolant pressure, but like it starts to foam the coolant itself. And so I realized that as I was refilling it, I was checking the sight glass, I was refilling it, and I was like, that sight glass is wrong, because I could see the coolant in the port where I was filling it and it didn't match the sight glass. And that was the issue. So,
so my brain just went on like a little exploratory mission of like could you do like a 2-gallon reservoir with like essentially like a siphon or like a ball valve to where when it drains, it refills, but now you have visual confirmation of the main of like your
sort of like a sump.
Yeah. Like your little secondary sump or something, or you being smart enough to probably figure this out. Can you like do a little sensor that just tells you like, hey, I'm dry?
That actually would be probably not too hard to do that. But what I ended up doing is like the only way to see the coolant is to open a port that's like 4 bolts with like lock washers. So it's not like you can just, well, what I'm going to do is, because it's just a round hole, and I was going to 3D print just a lid that sits in the round hole instead of having it like bolted shut. That way I can just look in there and
it's not something that is like containing fluid or anything.
No, it's on top. Yeah, it's like the top of the tank is there's no like orifice to look into.
That makes sense.
And so I was just going to do that, and maybe even have like a little gauge that's actually physically in the tank near the pump, so that there's no worry of just like trusting a secondary system or like the sight glass. And the sight glass could probably be cleaned and get it working again. And again, this is never like a major problem, but just a little process improvement would kind of
It's
solve
pretty
all this.
good. I'm still dealing with coolant problems.
Mm.
I'm getting ready to order. I'm just going to order the new Zebra coalescer.
Mm-hmm.
Here's the thought process. Basically, I can order a $130 pump, but I'm putting it into a 10-year-old system.
Mm-hmm.
When I looked at what Zebra has now, their system has actually changed.
Mm-hmm.
And so for $1,000, my brain is like, just get the next system because it's already lasted you a decade, and start fresh,
Mm-hmm.
assuming that the changes they've made have been improvements in its functioning,
Mm-hmm.
even though I could just get the pump for $130.
Yeah.
So
That's always a tough decision, man. Upgrade or maintain.
I know, because it's not like it. I'm trying to be really good about not buying equipment that doesn't essentially increase profit or
Right.
create a product.
Let me ask you this.
Yeah.
Your old Zebra system, what
Yep.
floor space does it take up?
It's small. So I would say less than 24 inches in diameter, maybe like 15 inches in diameter. This is why we use it.
I was going to say, I'm going to have to do some thinking. If you do want a new one and you want to get rid of the old one, I might consider buying you out of it.
And that's the thing, is the argument should be that you, who are doing far more machining than I am, probably would benefit from the new one.
Well, I agree with that. I wonder if one of the biggest benefits of the coalescer is for when you're not using the machine. Or do you think it is?
Yeah, that's the benefit. Right. So does yours, okay, do you have a lot of like tramp oil or like whey oil that gets in your coolant?
I do have to credit Sile. The engineering behind the way that the whey oil flows in that thing.
Oh, I think you mentioned this.
Results in almost non-existent whey oil in the coolant, like naturally.
So yeah, the big benefit for me in this system was actually just the recirculation of the coolant. Like, there's a million ways you could figure this out to be easy, but it keeps my coolant really clean, and it never starts to mildew, because it's basically, I have it on a timer. It runs like 4 times a day, and it just is putting oxygen and cleaning the tramp oil, which what the tramp oil builds up on the surface, and then bacteria grows. And so between keeping my coolant running like clean and fresh and making it last longer, it's a pretty big win. So yeah, if I do get a new one, you can just have my old one and just order a pump, and then at least lets you prove the concept.
Right.
And then I'll probably hand deliver it.
There you go.
So I can visit. It's really expensive.
Sounds good. You can help me blow out a wall so I can fit 24 more inches of equipment in.
Just what's the system? You need to go down. You're like boring holes in your concrete.
Right.
Where are you at space wise? So I'll preface this by saying, like, I have space used inefficiently right now, and I know this. And as I'm like refining back into how I can do more production, I'm looking at it almost the same way I'm looking at tool purchases, which is the jobs that are efficient deserve space. And then everything else is kind of, I need to like figure out a different solution for. So like, I'm pretty spread out and I don't have a ton of space. You are running very efficiently. Are you 100% maxed out, or
on buying equipment? We're 100% maxed out. Honestly, like, unless you don't want to be able to walk in the shop at all anymore, there's nothing. What's that?
Overrated. I think a sling system, you could just like slide around the ceiling.
Yeah. Like a sky crane inside there, and you just lift it over. Yeah. Yeah, no kidding. No, I mean, right now the efficiency gains I see ahead of us space wise is because we are doing the 25 to 50 piece batches. The reason I said those two numbers is I have trays that hold exactly 25 knives, and they can be in various stages. We have a kind of a color system too.
It's perfect.
And we have a lot of those bins, and we actually don't have anywhere to put those. So my dream would be to have like a row of shelves where you have like all the bins on this shelf are knives that are heat treated but unfinished.
Yeah.
And this shelf, we don't have room for that. But what I want to do is I do have shelves up high that are like kind of just storage that you wouldn't really want to put knives up there, but I want to hang one row of shelves below that around the shop so that it's almost like 270 degrees in the shop would be like
Yeah.
this slot for those like trays to just slide in.
Yeah.
And so going up is kind of the way to go. But the only reason is they take up all our bench space right now because we need to get them out all the time, and they end up covering the benches with just boxes of knives.
Right.
Um,
That's one thing that I've worked in all of my shops to do, which is don't I don't like vertical shelving because you are reducing the amount of potential bench space you have.
mm-hmm.
I think for the small shop, oftentimes the best variation is so bench height tables that perimeter the wall, cabinets above that, drawers or shelving underneath.
Mm-hmm.
Like Adam Savage would probably disagree with like the drawers concept because he likes first order retrievability. So, and his concept is essentially, or like thought process around it, I think is kind of like if you don't see it, it takes more time, and like it's like
You won't
so a
use
lot
it
of the
either.
stuff that he has, it's like open shelving or like open racks where you can
Mm-hmm.
see all the tools and don't have to like go in and dig around. I still like to be able to put things away, and I think that's just like my brain wanting like order.
Yeah.
And then center of the room, same thing. Like if a table fits in a space but has no storage under the table, I think that is a waste.
Yes. Yeah,
Right?
I agree.
Which is what, like, I use the like big toolboxes and I put them back to back and I make tabletops on them and stuff.
Yeah, that's perfect. I mean, so underneath our benches, a couple of my benches are like metal toolboxes, the drawer style, and those are used up. And then the two or three benches I have that basically it's the maximum amount of benches I could fit in that shop. They are fully utilized underneath. I think above, like you just mentioned, cabinets above the benches, that's where I'm not set up well yet.
Yeah.
That's the next area for sure. But as far as anything that actually sits on the floor that needs accessed, it's those days are gone.
So
Like I can't fit anything else.
There's like, I always love like some of the old like how to plan a shop books. They're always around carpentry, but I love like some of the tools. It's like, okay, on this bench we have a bench grinder on a panel, and then you flip that panel and on the other side is like a different tool.
Yep.
That stuff to me is always like, because there's a bunch of stuff that, especially in my case, less so in yours, like I don't use it all the time or like even frequently, but when I need it, I 100% need it. And so it's like that doesn't actually deserve to take up workspace.
Yeah. It's second order available.
It's like, but it's there when you need it. I don't want to have to like go dig it out. I wrote myself a note yesterday, which was like production in itself or making in the concept of like what I'm looking at is kind of an exercise in mindfulness. And so a lot of times I find an improvement or something that I think of related to it in the moment, and then I go do that thing. And so what I'm really trying to do is like, no, like when you're producing, like that is the mindful exercise. You can take the note, you can like remember to do the thing, but I can't stop and make the improvement midstream while I'm working. And I have to fight it constantly.
Same. Yeah. It becomes like a slippery slope because you'll be like, I never really cleaned up that air fitting area right there. Like before I sandblast, before I turn the compressor on, I might as well do that. And then pretty soon you're like, I should have a drop that goes out this corner. So probably just do that. And then you go to the hardware store and then,
you're done. I mean, like even this morning, I was like, I was sandblasting. I'm like, I should clean the filter for my sandblaster. And I 100% should, but I had 5 pieces left. And those 5 pieces going into the tumbler, that's actually the work that needed to happen. And so I was just looking at it from that standpoint and kind of like trying to refine back. That's how shop improvements are, man. It's so hard.
Yeah.
Because there's always a million things that will make it better or like more satisfying.
You can either make tools or you can make money.
unless you make tools for money and then you can do both.
Right.
I don't know. I want to get back. We need to get back to this like success for knife makers conversation. I feel like it's like multiple episodes because I keep having these experiences that are showing these like vastly different levels of like what success is kind of from like a personal standpoint and like how other people perceive it for themselves. There's like a level in there that would be like success is being able to work on whatever I want to work on, but then being able to stop and improve anything else.
Yeah.
It's like I'm making a knife, but now I want to build a shelf.
Yeah.
Because if you can do that, like there's some level of success that is existing probably.
You have flexibility to the extent that you aren't stuck on the rails in a sense.
Yeah. Like if you looked at that inside of a company, like what is that job? Like, because someone needs to make improvements.
Yeah.
But it would be weird. Like imagine you scale to the point where you're not necessary in the manufacturing of a knife. Do you then just become like a handyman kind of because you're like, I'm going to build a shelf that you guys are going to love.
Yeah.
Like, I
want that guy in my shop.
Oh, I would like that guy. I hadn't even thought of that.
It did remind me, I got to say, this is just a cautionary tale that has nothing to do with us, but maybe a little bit to do with us. If you want to hear this crazy story. So my brother-in-law that does my surface grinding, he works for Micron, like the Micron, the computers, blah, blah, blah. They make microchips. So Boise is their R&D headquarters.
Okay.
And massive campus. I mean, hundreds of acres, like just you could work there your whole life and someone else could work there their whole life and you'd never meet them, like that big.
It's an entire civilization.
Yeah, exactly. And so he manages the gas distribution because in all those processes, they use like 25 different like volatile gases and like highly purified gases. And so he's in charge of like maintaining, fixing, and like monitoring those things. And he said that they had a heck of a week this week where another guy who was working there, there's some gas, I'm not going to remember the name. It's like Sileon or like, I butchered it, but it's something similar to that, where he said if it reaches atmospheric pressure and is exposed to the atmosphere, it immediately ignites. He said there it doesn't require a spark because it's fuel and oxidizer together. And when it reaches atmospheric pressure, it just immediately turns into flame. And so he said that it's used obviously in the computer chip stuff, and it distributes to like 80 different machines from this one core tank. And a guy was working on it, and he supposedly like opened the wrong line, like spun the wrong lock nut or whatever. And the system is really intelligent in that it senses flame and it locks like 50 different ball valves instantaneously if it sees any sensation of flame. So maybe 30 seconds of flame, the thing shuts down. But the purification requirements on that gas are like in the parts per billion, he said. And so all of the downstream lines now have like particulate from flame, from like it burning. So they had 80 machines go down in the fab. They call it the fab, where they make the circuits and stuff. And he said like it's on the order of like hundreds of thousands of dollars in losses per hour. And it's like they're flying out like corporate CEOs and stuff for like putting together like a crisis team and all this stuff. And he said it's been interesting, but just be happy that we've built a business where you can't turn the wrong nut and like you have $30 million worth of damage.
Dude, I don't even understand that. Yeah. Like the amount of times I've probably pushed like the wrong switch. Like my surface grinder, it's crummy to accidentally push the power feed before I push like the traverse or whatever. That seems at that scale, that seems like a massive oversight. Like you don't want to have one petcock that is like between you and certain doom.
Yeah. Yep. So wow. I know that's a total tangent, but we were just talking about our processes and our design of our shop and improving airlines and stuff. And that happened this week. So
I got to check out, two very cool shops recently. And this is like, this is one of my favorite parts about traveling, I think, maker wise is, so when we were up in Portland, Dan Matsuda is there, who has a soft goods company called Sample. Dude is so talented, and seeing the layout of his shop was eye-opening because they're really small. It's like a home-based kind of business, and works with his wife. And soft goods are interesting because they're so different than what we do from a process standpoint, but the layout and the efficiency, it really like is exciting to me. I don't know why. It seems very like parallel kind of. If you're not familiar with him, definitely check him out. It's on Instagram. He's Sidetrack 150.
Okay.
Dude, awesome. Super cool stuff. He does these backpacks, like he'll repurpose rice bags and build like these crazy technical backpacks, all kinds of organizers, just like very cool stuff. And he's playing with lasers and automation and 3D printing and like all the stuff that like we're doing. And it's cool to see like that our thought processes and like the things that we're struggling with applied to different materials. He is also like he's a CAD beast, which just infuriates me because I'm like, he's so good. You guys would probably have a lot to talk about.
Yeah.
And then second shop I got to check out, this one is like very relatable, is McLean Metalworks, who is here in Bend. That's my buddy Chris. They do a few things. They do like McLean Metalworks does like shop products kind of stuff. Like he's been building these tray systems for like the plastic bins that we use, organizing stuff like that. But they also build overland hammocks that are like hitch mount hammocks. Dude, he's got to have one of the cleanest shops I've ever seen for a metalworking shop. And he's got like in there, he's got fabrication, powder coating, like they're doing everything, but you go in and you just see that it's all workflow. When you come visit, I was going to say next time, but you haven't been here. When you come visit, maybe we'll go check out his shop. I think you'd really like it.
Yes.
So
I love, dude, being exposed to other manufacturing spheres.
Dude.
I love going to knife maker shops, but there is a part of me that almost enjoys something out there even more, because it's like I'm going to be surprised a lot more, I think. And what can we take from someone else? Like Micron has a machine shop that I want to see, and he told me he could show it to me, but I haven't done it yet.
Well, and then there's like the scale thing too, because like at a point you're just like, it's almost unrelatable. It's like Alien. Like I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, he was saying their machine shop, it's not even on like the ground floor, not even on concrete, and they've got 1 million pounds of machines, but it's like the floor is like tiles that are so big that like a actual mill can sit on it, like a huge mill. And so all their air and powers run like under the tiles, and they can like lift a tile out and like reconfigure the room with air, and it's like,
dude, but imagine that's like your first experience with shops and you're like, okay, how do I do this?
Yeah.
Like it's nice to have the scalable elements and like the tie-ins, but I 100% agree that seeing how other industries use similar process is, I think, long-term, like pretty valuable, because the stuff just gets like stored away.
Yeah.
Or you see a tool that's like a support tool that you don't have and don't have a reason for. But then you see it in use and you're like, I didn't even know that existed. And it just exists there. It's like, I think as a maker, that's probably why going to like IMTS, or one of those other like big machine shows is so valuable. It's because you just walk aisles and you're like, oh, I didn't know that existed. Like, oh, what's that measurement tool?
And even if you don't need it now, or you don't visualize a use, like just for 5 years down the road, when you have a problem and you're like, there is a machine for this that I have seen, I know it exists. And then that it's like, it's findable at that point.
It's findable.
Yeah. I'd love to go to a machine show like that, like IMTS. That's on my bucket list.
That might be, we were talking a little bit before we started recording about a potential multi-day downshift opportunity that sounds pretty fun. Maybe IMTS or something like that would be something that we could justify doing.
Yeah.
through the lens of, I mean, we have like multiple lenses, but like through the lens of the podcast and research.
Right. I know. No, that'd be a fun time. I'd really enjoy
Pretty
it.
good.
It's like SHOT Show, but not SHOT Show.
Yeah, man. What else? We are like out of flow in a certain way because we both have just been like crunching on a million different things, and we haven't had like topical podcasts in a while. Do we do a short one, or do we have more stuff to talk about?
Let me gloss over the last month because that's when we haven't talked. I think we've covered it. Other than real quick, let's talk just briefly about the sheath, just so that I have at least some ideas on the turn sheath.
Yep.
I have set up the Sport for basically any clip someone would want to put on it. I want to do a similar thing. What I want to have inventoried is the option between a ulti clip or a small tech lock.
Yep.
Because it allows horizontal and also vertical if you want that too on your belt. I was kind of thinking of rolling it out with those options, and I was curious what you thought.
I think that's great. I think that covers actually all necessary things, because you can do an in pocket, you can clip it inside of a backpack pocket, or you can use tech lock and orient on a pack strap, on gear, on belt, whatever.
I did have a customer say that he did. I don't have a Mummert clip here, but he did put a Mummert clip on an Overland Sport.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's what he ended up using, but he said he just confirmed that it did fit.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of Mummert clips in general. As we're talking about it, like, I think it would be a good option, but it's an expensive like inline.
Yeah, I agree.
They're very, very cool, but they're like essentially handmade in the US and they're pricey.
Yeah. I was considering on my website, I've been breaking it down into more categorical store pages because I'm getting enough stuff on there. I am going to add a category, I think, that's like parts and accessories.
Yeah.
Because I'm getting to where there's things like that where I'd love to throw it in, but it's going to get cluttered.
Yeah.
But yeah, it'd be cool to just have it on like parts and accessories, Mummert clip.
And I think that's a great idea too, because then you get like the upgrade ability. And I think options in that format are like very, very cool.
Yeah.
So, I mean, let's order some Mummert clips and when you do the run, drop 10 or something.
Yeah.
In accessories.
That'd be great.
Man, I'm trying to think if there's anything else going on. Dude, it's whirlwind. I'm leaving Saturday to go get my dad. So that has occupied like a lot of time. We're kind of on the home stretch of that. We've been getting a room ready for him and trying to like dial in like services and all this stuff. It's like, it's a lot of pieces to put together.
Well, this may be the last time we talk before you peel out and go on that adventure. And I got to say, just good luck to you, man.
Thanks, dude.
You're doing good work. I mean, it's a noble cause.
We're super excited. He's very excited. Weird like side note, and I don't even know if this is like pod, whatever. I'm just gonna throw it out. So planning as it is, right? Like for a long time, I tried to get him to be like, hey, at this point, I would like to come live with you. We could never start that conversation, right? Turns out, so in the last like month, he got pneumonia and he ended up in the hospital. From the hospital, he ended up going to a rehab. But in the rehab, they basically made the decision that he is not capable of living 100% on his own. What I thought was so interesting about this was that regardless of the plan that we've had now for at least a couple months, had he not made that decision, we still would have ended up in the exact same place. I don't know if like he sensed something coming down the line or what, but I was like, that's crazy to me.
That does speak to his character on his ability to sense that. Cause I think that's it's common for people not to sense it and then acknowledge it when maybe that's coming. Of course, this is a rabbit hole, but like, that's cool that he was aware.
It's like, it's like a trust your gut thing.
Yeah.
I mean, and it's within a couple month period. Like, so whatever was going on, he was like, that's probably a good time.
Yeah.
So yeah, man. Good. Last thing, I'm going to be shooting right past you.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if maybe we can grab lunch or something
This Saturday.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And maybe
Yeah.
depending
Absolutely.
on time and where you're at and
Yeah.
what we can do.
Yeah.
But,
Yep.
cool.
That would be sweet.
All right, guys. Thank you for listening, TJ. I'm excited to see the turn.
Try to send you a picture
keep
by
me posted.
no later than mid-morning tomorrow is my goal.
All right. And we should be good to record next week. So thanks for listening, guys.
Awesome.
Stay safe.
Thank you all. Peace.